Hello Geneva, welcome to Geneva Works. I'm your host Kevin Starr. Our city organization has undergone a leadership change in several key administration positions, including at our police department. Today, we sit down with new Police Chief Eric Passarelli to learn a little bit about his background and what's ahead for the department.
I started my career with the Kendall County Sheriff's Department in 1992. I was a road deputy for them for 2 years. Came to the City of Geneva in 1994 and have been here ever since. Really had my first exposure to law enforcement when I worked as a security officer at Mercy Center Hospital. Really enjoyed my time there. Had a lot of good experiences with the police officers there that really got me started in this career. My responsibility is as commander. I was the police services commander. There's two commanders at the police department, patrol operations and police services. In that role, I was responsible for all of the civilian employees within the department. That includes our records division, our community service officers, our records manager, and one sworn officer being the administrative sergeant. I would oversee the evidence room, property within the police department, all the parking within the city, which is anyone who's familiar with the city knows is a challenge. And I would oversee all special events, coordinating everything from the sign posting to assuring that there was manpower to work the event, to being out on site on those days that there were either runs or the festivals that the city hosts each year. The transition has been very exciting. It's been great to work with the staff in this new role. I know I'm a little bit biased, but that we have an incredible police department. I'm not from the outside. I've obviously been with the city for a long period of time, and the staff there knows me well, but I still need to earn their respect in this role. They've given me every opportunity to do that so far, and I think it's gone exceptionally well so far. Obviously, there's been some significant changes at the police department. With my promotion to chief, that opened up the police services commander position. That spot is now filled by Commander Brian Meduzia, who was previously the administrative sergeant. A great asset in that role, a really hard worker, and he's going to be very good at doing the responsibilities or handling the responsibilities of this position. Sergeant Eli Rivera, who was a midnight shift patrol sergeant, is now the administrative sergeant. And while that's somewhat of a lateral position, it gives him exposure to a lot of different functions within the police department. And right now he's on our commander's list, so it's a good experience and helps with succession planning as we move forward. And then Brad Jardee was promoted to sergeant, and he had previously served as the high school liaison officer for the last 5 years. And Sergeant Matt Dean now has been promoted to sergeant, and he's on midnight shift as well. I don't know so much that people will see the changes that are occurring. I think that we have a really good police department that's very invested in our community. We offer a lot of different programs to our residents, to our businesses, such as crime prevention seminars and different types of programs like that, internet safety. We try and be as responsive as we can to the residents and to the business owners here in town and those who visit. I think you may see some different ways that we go about our business, trying to be a little more efficient and trying to address some of the concerns of things that we deal with on a daily basis. Mental health is a huge concern for us. We handle several calls like that a week. So anything that we can do to prepare ourselves better to deal with those situations. In Illinois, there's a training class for police officers where they become crisis intervention trained, and moving forward we will look to implement something along those lines where specially trained officers are able to respond to those high stress situations, dealing with mental health emergencies where hopefully they can de-escalate the situation, which makes it safer for the persons that are involved and for our staff. But beyond that, I don't know so much that you're going to see a lot of external changes right now. Just a re-envisioning of the way we do business a little bit. I want to sit down with each of our employees, and that process has begun. and really find out, even though, again, I've been here, but I'd like to know what we're doing right in their opinion and things they feel that we can improve. I think it's important to do that 360 review of your department. I don't want to be comfortable going into it knowing I was part of administration before thinking, hey, things are perfect, because nothing's ever perfect. And I know we can do things better. So I'm very much looking forward to those meetings to get some great feedback from our staff so that we can find ways to better deliver services to our residents. Well, those things are extremely important to us, obviously. Once you lose the trust of your community, it's very hard, if not impossible, to get that back. So we really strive to be transparent whenever we're able to do so. I think that's where it all begins. And then from there, it really kind of molds into or becomes part of our hiring process. We have a very rigorous hiring process. It's a long process. I think sometimes people think, well, if you need a police officer, you go get one hired. It usually takes about a year to get an officer on board and through everything that they need to go to make sure that they're a good fit for the city. So our process begins with our Board of Police and Fire Commissioners, very smart people who care deeply about the community. They go through these testing processes with a physical agility test, a written test, and then an interview with the board. And we, prior to them going into the interview, provide them with background information on the candidates. Not as in-depth of a background as we would do later, but gives a good snapshot of where this person's coming from, where they've been, so that the commissioners can go in and interview them and have a good knowledge base about the person that they're talking to. If they make it through that process, they're put on an eligibility list. And when we have an opening on the police department, we have to take from that eligibility list, and we bring that candidate in, and they meet with myself, both commanders at the police department, and the detective sergeant. The detective sergeant's there because it's his unit that conducts these background checks, and it's very helpful to have him there when he knows what's in that paperwork when we're interviewing a person, because until we really get to know them, they're just a name and a face. We don't know what their background is really about. So we submit them, or go through about a 2-hour interview with them, getting to know them, ask questions that we feel are very pertinent to what we expect of a Geneva police officer. Our community has very high expectations, and rightfully so. You know, they trust us, and they trust us to put good people out on the street. Obviously, officers are dealing with stressful and difficult situations, and we want to make sure they're a good fit for the Geneva Police Department family along with the Geneva family. So once we get through that interview and we decide whether or not they're a good candidate, we then offer them a conditional offer of employment. And at that time, then they go through a psychological test, a medical background, and a polygraph exam. And we wait for each of those tests to come back to us. If they fail any part of it, whether we like them or not, they're not a candidate for us any longer. Once they pass all of that, then they get sent off to the academy for 3 months, and then they come back to our field training program for another 3 to 4 months, where they're trained how to be a Geneva officer, because the academy teaches them the basics of how you make a traffic stop and how you respond to calls. But being a police officer here in Geneva is much more than about responding to calls. It's how you treat people. It's how you handle their complaints and their issues. We want to rectify the problem once and for all if we can. It's to nobody's benefit to have us go back to a call 4 or 5 times and have no resolve for the complainant or anyone involved. So we really put a lot of time and effort into our officers to make sure that they're up to the standards that we expect and that our residents expect. They're on probation for 18 months. And if we see in that 18-month period of time that they're not a fit for us, we don't retain them. We think the trust that the community put in us is irreplaceable, and we would never do anything to betray that. So we try to be as transparent in the hiring and make sure that whoever is brought on board is a good fit for our community. Well, I think there's a couple of significant challenges that we're going to be dealing with going forward. Crime has changed. You know, when I started 24 years ago in law enforcement, I never went to an identity theft call. Credit card fraud wasn't something that we dealt with very often. We weren't dealing with IRS phone scams and Nigerian scams and different things that we're dealing with all the time. The technology has changed a great deal, and the bad guys are really using the technology to their advantage. I think one of the challenges for us in trying to be good stewards of taxpayer dollars the technology isn't cheap, and there's a cost of doing this business that we need to find ways to use our resources that we have now, along with our other partners in law enforcement, such as federal agencies, other local agencies, to make sure that we're staying ahead of these crimes and that we're able to bring some resolve for the victims of the crimes, because that's obviously very important. It's very frustrating. These crimes now spread globally, literally, and it's not uncommon that our detectives will be assigned a case and they're talking to Interpol and they're talking to other agencies that we've never ever had to deal with before. So that's something that is going to be a real challenge for us to try and keep up with. A second challenge is, and it's a good thing and it's a bad thing at the same time, is our department has had a great deal of stability, very little turnover. Many of our employees have 20, 30 years, which is a true testament to the city, true testament to those employees that this is a great place to be. We enjoy great support from our residents in the community, and not everybody has that benefit. We do. But because of that, we're reaching that time where a lot of these employees are getting ready to retire now, have put in, like I said, 30 years, and it's time for them to find something else that they want to do. So with that comes an influx of new officers and the challenge of hiring new officers, new staff, and getting them up to speed with what's important to Geneva residents. Experience is irreplaceable. So when we bring somebody new in, it takes 3 to 5 years for that officer or staff member to be up to speed with everything that they need to do to see the majority of what they're going to see. So it's important to know the who's who within the community and where our trouble spots are, where our accident intersections are, what this community expects from the officers. So the challenge is getting that new blood into the department, getting them up to speed as quickly as we can so that the city doesn't notice a drop-off in that new group of officers. We have an outstanding field training program. They work very hard to get the officers up to speed. We've actually extended our field training program simply because of the amount of things that they have to learn now. It's not as simple as just getting around town, and I mean, their cars have computers in them where they have a ton of access to it. The fingerprinting is electronic. All the things that they do now take a lot more time to grasp and to really become familiar with. So again, it's just the time and investment making sure that we're hiring good people and that they're providing good service to our community. I can be contacted at the Geneva Police Department. The phone number is 630-232-4736. I can be reached via email at Passarelli, P-A-S-S-A-R-E-L-L-I, at geneva.il.us, or you can visit the City of Geneva's website. Under the government page, you can find the police department.